We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. The first time I realized something was off, she came home smiling. Not the tired, soft smile that followed a long meeting or a deadline beaten, but a bright, blooming one that didn't belong in our quiet, predictable marriage. I was in the kitchen peeling a stubborn orange. The smell of citrus clung to my hands, sharp and sweet. She walked in wearing that slate blue pantsuit, the one she always called her game face outfit. Her heels tapped across the tile like a metronome, steady and precise. "Hey, babe," she said, kissing me on the cheek. You wouldn't believe the kind of day I had. But I didn't ask, because by then, I'd already started noticing things. Let me back up. My name's Colt Rayner. I'm 49. Been an auto technician since the day after I graduated high school. Never missed a day of work unless a fever knocked me flat. I rebuilt engines, replaced brake lines, rotated tires, and paid off every single bill without a single dollar of debt. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. And she was mine too. Madeline, my high school sweetheart. The girl who wore sweatpants and an Alabaster State hoodie when we married at 19. She studied business. I worked at a shop. She said we'd build an empire together. That was her word. Empire. Back then, I thought it just meant a family, a home, 2 kids, and enough groceries to not stress out at the checkout line. But Madeline had other dreams. And I worked 2 jobs to help her chase them. I paid for her undergrad, then her MBA. I made lunch for the kids when she pulled all-nighters for presentations. I drove her to interviews in a beat-up Chevy I could barely keep running. Eventually, she got hired by one of the biggest consulting firms in the tri-state area, Argent Core Strategies. They promised her bonuses, international travel, and influence. She became a rising star. I stayed in the garage, hands greasy, back aching, making sure the light stayed on. We lived in the same house for 27 years. Shared the same bed, made the same coffee every morning, and I never thought to question a thing. Until the envelope. It wasn't even hidden, just lying there in her laptop bag, one morning when she asked me to grab her charger. I shouldn't have opened it. I know that. But the name of a pharmacy we'd never used caught my eye. Inside were small white pills, 10 of them, along with a label that said, "Take one immediately, another in 12 hours if needed. Emergency contraception." I froze. My hands went cold. See, I'd had a vasectomy 12 years ago. After our second child, we'd agreed, no more. So, what the hell was she doing with those pills? I put the envelope back like I hadn't seen it, but my mind spun all night. That week, Madeline had a conference in Atlanta. Big client presentation. She was flying out Wednesday and wouldn't return until Friday. Said she'd be off-grid the whole time. No phones, no emails. Too busy. And she looked nervous, not stressed, just weird. Extra careful about her outfits, triple checking her makeup, even took perfume she never wore anymore, and lingerie, expensive ones, the kind she hadn't touched in years. I didn't say anything, just smiled and helped zip her suitcase, told her I was proud of her. Then I followed her, not to be petty, not to catch her red-handed. I just needed to know. The man in me, the guy who held her through postpartum depression, who cleaned up baby puke at 3 a.m., who sold his Harley so she could finish grad school. That man needed answers. I drove to Atlanta, slept in my truck, ate vending machine sandwiches, watched from afar, and on the second night, I saw her, walking hand in hand with a man in a navy suit. His hand grazed her back like he owned it. They laughed, whispered. He kissed her shoulder while she leaned into him like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I went to her hotel room and took everything. Laptop, notes, files, even her presentation materials. Everything she'd need to impress that boardroom full of suits. Then I left her a note. Just 2 words. I know. And my wedding ring. By the time Madeline called me, her voice was shaking. "Colt, what did you do?" I was already 80 miles north, my pickup humming over the blacktop. I didn't answer right away. Just stared ahead at the horizon, gripping the wheel. "You took everything," she said, her breath ragged. "My laptop, my files. Colt, that presentation was gone now." I replied flatly. "And so are we." She choked back something that sounded like a sob. "You don't understand. It wasn't." "Don't lie to me, Mads." Silence. "You were holding his hand." More silence. And then she said the one thing I wasn't expecting. It didn't mean anything. My grip on the steering wheel tightened until my knuckles blanched. That phrase, "it didn't mean anything," was the cruelest kind of insult. Like you could go to a man and say, "Relax, it's just a paper cut." I ended the call without another word. Blocked her number. Then I threw the burner phone out the window like it was cursed. Back home, I buried her conference materials in the crawl space. Her designer heels. Her business cards. Even the USB drive with her pitch deck. She was due to present at 9 a.m. By then, she was pacing a hotel hallway in a wrinkled cocktail dress, calling anyone who would pick up, scrambling to find a copy of something that no longer existed. They fired her, not just from the project. Argent Corps terminated her on the spot. No severance. No backup. Turns out when you're caught lying to a client and missing proprietary assets, even the brightest resume turns worthless. I should have felt triumphant. I didn't. I just felt empty. Over the next few weeks, word spread fast. Her affair with Spencer Clay, the head of Midtown Urban Affairs and the married consultant who sat on the city's budget board, hit the whispers like wildfire. People snickered about hotel rooms, wine bottles, and emergency meetings. His wife filed for divorce. His party dropped him from the upcoming ballot. And Madeline, she disappeared. Her name vanished from LinkedIn. She deleted every social account. Didn't show up to our kids' birthdays. Sarah tried to get her on the phone. Elliot wrote her a long email. Neither heard back. She moved out of the house within a month. I came home one night to find the closet half empty and a note taped to the fridge. "I'm sorry." I didn't reply. I rented out the upstairs rooms to a quiet couple and moved into the guest unit. I let the house fall into silence. The only sound left was the hum of the fridge and the occasional clatter of wrenches in my garage. And then something happened that turned everything upside down again. It was 5 years later, a Friday morning. I just finished a tune-up on a 96 Mustang when a knock came at the bay door. Two strangers, well-dressed, mid-40s, out of place in a garage full of grease and rust. "You Colt Rayner?" the man asked. "Depends who's asking." "I'm Derek Fulton. This is my wife, Jenna. We adopted a little girl named Emily 4 years ago." I stared at him. "Congrats." He didn't smile. "She's sick. Leukemia. Needs a bone marrow transplant." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said genuinely. "But what's it got to do with me?" They exchanged a glance. Then Jenna stepped forward, clutching a manila folder. "Your name," she whispered, "is on her birth certificate." I blinked. "That's not possible. She's Madeline's daughter." I staggered back like I'd been sucker punched. My heart beat so loud I could hear it echo in the metal walls. "Wait," I said. "She had a daughter?" "She gave her up for adoption 6 months after you left," Jenna said softly. "The agency didn't know the full story. They just said you were listed as the father." "I had a vasectomy over a decade before that," I muttered. "That child isn't mine. But you might be the only person who knows who is." And I did. I hadn't forgotten Spencer Clay. That smug, grinning face. The man who toasted my wife in a hotel lounge while whispering promises into her ear. The man who helped destroy my marriage. I looked at the Fultons. "I'll help your daughter," I said, my voice steady. "But I want you to listen closely." They nodded. "His name is Spencer Clay. He's rich, ruthless, and doesn't care who he steps on. But he's Emily's biological father. And if he won't help willingly make him." Spencer Clay's face was everywhere. Billboards, buses, campaign mailers. His perfectly trimmed beard and navy blue suits were plastered across every inch of Westchester County. He was no longer just a bureaucrat. He was a rising political star, a Senate candidate with a spotless record, millions in funding, and a story so squeaky clean it made your teeth hurt. Except I knew better. And now, so did the Fultons. Derek and Jenna did exactly what I asked. They didn't flinch. They met with a lawyer, sent formal requests for paternity confirmation, and backed it up with the birth certificate Madeline had left behind. Clay refused, of course, threatened them with defamation, promised lawsuits, even had his legal team send letters with enough zeros to make anyone else run. But they didn't back down. Not when a little girl's life was on the line. I stayed in the background, let the pressure build, made a few anonymous calls to old contacts in Philly, a reporter I once helped when her alternator broke down, a nurse who remembered Madeline's odd behavior during prenatal visits. And finally, Jenna called me on a Wednesday night, breathless. He caved. The test was positive. Spencer Clay, soon-to-be senator, king of clean politics, was Emily's biological father, and he was furious. He called the Fultons leeches, accused them of exploiting a sick child, and still tried to avoid the marrow transplant. Until the story broke. My reporter friend ran it. Not the salacious kind either. Just the facts. A powerful political figure, exposed as the secret father of a dying girl he refused to help. By morning, the fire was uncontrollable. Talk shows ran with it. Hashtags exploded. Protesters stood outside his office. His opponent, sensing blood, demanded his withdrawal from the race. Sponsors pulled out. His approval rating plummeted. And just like that, the mighty Spencer Clay cracked. He agreed to the transplant, but it was too late to save his career. His wife filed for divorce within a week. The party dumped him. His carefully built empire came crashing down. I watched it all from a distance. Didn't smile. Didn't gloat. Because even though I'd helped burn down the man who ruined my marriage, the ashes didn't bring peace. They just brought more questions. About Emily. About Madeline. About what came next. It was Sarah who convinced me to visit. "She's gone, Dad," she said gently over the phone. "Mom passed 3 weeks ago." I said nothing. "She left something for you. A letter. I don't know what's in it, but maybe it'll help." I drove to Pensacola. The trailer park was quiet, run down, almost forgotten by the world. A woman named Rachel met me at the door. She had short brown hair, tired eyes, and a quiet warmth. "You must be cold," she said. "She talked about you every day." I stepped inside. The place smelled of lavender and dust. And there, on a shelf, sat a brass urn. I didn't cry. I just stood there, trying to find the version of her I used to love in that silent metal vessel. Rachel handed me an envelope. My name was written on the front in Madeline's familiar script, soft, elegant, the way she used to label the kids' lunchboxes. I opened it. "Colt, I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I won't ask for it. But I want you to know that the moment I realized what I'd lost was too late. Not the job, not the money. You. Emily was a mistake I made while trying to outrun the guilt of ruining the best thing I ever had. I never told Spencer. I never told anyone. I just wanted to disappear. And I did. But I never stopped loving you. That's the worst part. I betrayed you, and I still loved you. If this letter ever reaches you, I hope you're okay. I hope you're at peace. And I hope you never have to feel what I felt when I walked into that empty hotel room and found nothing left but silence. Mads." I folded the letter and tucked it back inside. Rachel made coffee. We talked for hours. About Madeline, about life, about pain that lingers even after the person who caused it is gone. She told me that after Madeline lost her job, she tried to get sober, try to rebuild. But she couldn't. The guilt had sunk too deep. That night, I sat outside Rachel's trailer under a sky, so clear it looked like shattered glass. I thought about revenge, about how good it felt to watch Spencer Clay's life unravel. But now, I just felt tired, because revenge doesn't stitch up old wounds. It just distracts you from the bleeding. I left Pensacola 2 days later with the letter in my jacket and a strange weight pressing on my chest. Not grief, exactly. Something deeper. Something that whispered, "You still haven't let go." Rachel hugged me before I left. Said I could call anytime. That I didn't have to be alone. But I wasn't ready to be close to anyone. Not yet. Not until I put the last piece of the story in place. That piece was Emily. The Fultons had kept me updated during the transplant process. Emily was responding well. No complications so far. Her cheeks had regained their color. Her energy was returning. And she'd started asking questions about where she came from. They hadn't told her everything, of course. Just that she was strong, special, loved. I called Derek. "I want to meet her," I said. "Not as a father. Just someone who cares." He hesitated only a moment. "I think she'd like that." The visit happened in a little house in Westchester. Their living room had sunflowers on the curtains and coloring books all over the floor. Emily was sitting cross-legged in the corner, building a tower out of mismatched blocks. She looked up when I walked in. "You the man who fixed engines?" she asked. I blinked. "Oh yeah, that's me." She nodded. "Engines are cool. I want to build one." Jenna smiled. She's been talking about mechanics ever since she saw that old motorcycle at the hospital. Emily got up and walked over. Her tiny hand grabbed mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You want to see my fort?" she asked. I couldn't speak for a moment. My throat locked, but I nodded. We played for 2 hours, talked about cartoons, jelly beans, and why she thought clouds were just floating cotton balls. I didn't bring up her mother. I didn't mention Spencer. But before I left, she did. My mommy, she's gone, right? I knelt down. Yeah, she is. Do you miss her? That one hurt. Yes, I whispered. I do. She tilted her head. I think she misses you too. From wherever she is. I nearly broke. Kids have this way of slicing right through you without meaning to. After that, I started going back every few weeks. Helped Emily build model cars. Taught her how to change the oil on a lawnmower. Slowly, piece by piece, I let my anger go. Spencer Clay had vanished from public life. Last I heard, he'd moved to Vermont, trying to reinvent himself as a consultant again. I didn't care. His face no longer haunted me. Madeline's trailer was sold to a young couple just starting out. I gave them a discount, told them to fill the place with laughter and never waste time being bitter. Rachel and I stayed in touch, but not romantically. Some people are meant to walk beside you for a while, not stay forever. And that was okay. One night, sitting at Sarah's kitchen table with her 2 little boys climbing over my shoulders, she asked, "Do you regret not filing for divorce?" I looked down at my hands. Not anymore, I said. I used to think closure came with a signature. But sometimes it's just knowing you survived. A month later, I was closing up the garage when a man pulled into the lot in a sleek black car. Derek stepped out. "She's in full remission," he said, beaming. "Doctors say the transplant worked." I smiled, genuinely. But he wasn't done. "She wants to call you Grandpa." The first time Emily called me Grandpa, I had to excuse myself to the bathroom so she wouldn't see me cry. It was a Tuesday afternoon, warm and golden, the kind of day you don't usually remember, unless something unforgettable happens. She was coloring on the porch, legs swinging, hair tied in a messy bun. I just handed her a glass of lemonade when she smiled up and said, "Thanks, Grandpa." Simple, soft, like it had always been that way. And in that moment, all the pieces of my life, the good, the bad, the brutal, felt like they'd finally settled into place. I never remarried, never moved out of my 2-bedroom rental, but I started to live again. Took Emily to the Science Museum, built her a wooden go-kart from scratch, let her paint flames on the side, even though they looked more like spaghetti noodles. I taught her how engines breathe, how gears dance together like a clockwork orchestra. She told her teachers I was a fixer of broken things. And maybe that's what I'd always been, not just with machines, but with people. One evening, years later, Sarah handed me a box she found in storage. "For Mom," she said. "I think she meant for you to have it eventually." I opened it alone. Inside were dozens of old photos. Us at the beach. Me holding baby Sarah. Madeline asleep on the couch with our son nestled on her chest. There was even a torn napkin with the words, "We'll build an empire, together," scribbled in her handwriting. At the bottom of the box was a flash drive. I plugged it into my computer. It was a video, recorded shortly after the affair, probably before I'd found out. She looked exhausted, but sincere. "If I'm not here when you find this, I want you to know I remember everything. The cheap coffee, the late-night drives, the time you fixed my radio so I could fall asleep to Sinatra. You gave up your dreams so I could chase mine. And in doing that, you became the foundation of everything I ever achieved. I destroyed that. I know I did. But you never stopped being my home, Colt, even when I didn't deserve you." I sat in the dark for a long time after that. The past had stopped hurting, but it still echoed. Eventually, Emily grew up. Straight A student. Loved puzzles. Built a computer before she turned 12. When she graduated from high school, I stood in the front row, heart in my throat, as she gave the valedictorian speech. She didn't mention me by name. Didn't have to. Sometimes, the people who save us aren't the ones who bring us into the world, but the ones who never leave it, who show up with tools in their hands, stories in their chest, and just enough silence to help you hear your own voice. Now I'm 63, still working on cars, still sipping black coffee on the porch every morning. Emily visits often. She's in college now, studying mechanical engineering, wants to build prosthetics for kids who can't afford them. She tells me I'm her inspiration. But truth is, I'm just a man who was broken once. And instead of staying shattered, I rebuilt. And that is how a humble mechanic, betrayed and forgotten, found a second chance at life. Not through revenge, not through rage, but through a child who shouldn't have existed, and somehow saved him.